if you haven't had a loved one or a close family friend or somebody in your circle navigate neurodivergence, it's really difficult to see what's going on. If you've met one neurodivergent person, you've met one neurodivergent person. So each person's experience, just like the way that they process, is as unique and complex as layered. But it's really, really hard to be self-aware. We live in siloed echo chambers inside of our own heads. I know for me, it's really beneficial to talk to my loved ones, and they will reflect and say, "You looked really stressed here," when I thought I was smiling.
Welcome to Rethink Time, the podcast brought to you by Time Timer. We'll explore how we teach, support, and experience time in the classroom, in therapy spaces, and in everyday life. Time is something that everybody has to navigate, whether you're a teacher or you're a parent or you're just somebody that struggles managing time yourself. We're going to be interviewing experts in the fields of education and neurodiversity to share real life strategies that you can use every day. And that way, time feels more understood to everyone in your life. I'm Kristen Barbercheck, and today we're going to be talking to Sammie Kelly, who is from an organization called Beyond Neurodiversity, and I'm really excited about this conversation. We're going to dive into some what it really feels like day to day for individuals working in workplaces with neurodiverse needs, and also like what we can do as organizations and leaders to create environments to support people of all kinds. So thank you for joining me. Like I said, I'm really excited you're here. Can you just start by telling me a little bit about Beyond Neurodiversity and how that came to be?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I was been looking forward to this for a long time. So Beyond Neurodiversity, we're an organization that works with other organizations, companies, nonprofits, you name it, to help them support their neurodivergent employees. So that might be somebody with ADHD, with autism, with dyslexia. There's a wide variety of diagnoses and conditions and experiences that fall under what it means to be neurodivergent, but the goal is to make individuals feel seen, heard, and allow them to find ways to thrive at work, especially in environments that maybe aren't built for their particular needs or the way that their brain works. So that's really the focus. We do that through training, coaching, development, you name it. But it's been a wonderful experience. I've loved every minute of it, and just continuing to try to do good work.
And how did you come about starting this company?
Sure. So let's see, I was 27 and I was going through therapy, and my therapist very kindly, very gently made the recommendation that maybe, just maybe, it made sense to go pursue an ADHD diagnosis. And I thought she was, out of her mind. I said, no way, but sure, if it'll appease you, let's check it out. Lo and behold, it was true. I had ADHD, and I joke that, some people have letters after their name. Mine is ADHD.
Okay.
But I was so embraced by the organization that I was working for. I worked for an outsourced HR management firm.
Okay.
And I had a boss who was just the most encouraging, the most supportive and accommodating. It was not oh, well, I knew it, or, oh my God, I'm shocked. When I told her, it was, okay, so how do you feel? What do you need? How can we support you? And I had a team that was the same way. They were amazing. And I was so blessed to have that kind of team. And it became apparent to me that not everybody who was going through a very similar experience had that opportunity or that privilege, really. I call it a privilege. And so I began to speak about neurodiversity in the workplace here in Cincinnati, and began to connect with so many people who had similar experiences or who were thinking about loved ones. And I say doors opened, windows closed, whatever you want to say. But eventually I began to see the opportunity that, this conversation needs to be had. There are so many other individuals. In fact, neurodiversity, I should say neurodivergence, impacts 1 in 4 people. So there are so many other people out in the world who are just trying to get through a world that's not built for them.
Right.
So that's kind of how I launched Beyond Neurodiversity. I took a leap, and so far, so good.
Yeah. So what gave you the courage to jump into that? Like, because it sounds like you were in a good place, right? You actually were lucky to have a supportive organization. So I can imagine it would have been very hard to decide, okay, I'm going to leave this and go do something else.
Oh, it was terrifying. And if you asked any of my family or my husband, they played counselor for quite a while. But it was ultimately, it felt like a calling. It felt like this moment of saying, I know that I can do this. I know that I can make a positive impact. I've been looking for that opportunity. And it was an internal conversation of, if I don't do it, who will? And if I know that I can do it, why don't I?
Right.
So yes, that took a lot of courage. It took a huge leap. I'm probably still paying a few therapy bills for it. But it was a wonderful choice. I'm very happy that I did it. But that courage, it takes a while to build up. It takes a lot of really strategic conversations, and it takes a lot of deep thought on the part of, okay, so if I do this, how do I do this? What does this look like? What do I want my impact to be?
Yeah, there's a lot of planning that goes into that as well. So you mentioned you were diagnosed later in life with ADHD. So was it one of those moments that when you finally found out you had it, it was all of a sudden it's like, oh, this all makes so much sense.
Very much so. I apologized to the psychiatrist on the other end of the call when he called me and told me that I had ADHD. I just began to cry so unexpectedly because it did make sense. It did click, and it answered a lot of questions about why I felt so different navigating the world around me. And I kept apologizing to him, saying, I'm so sorry. And he goes, no, this happens a lot. So it was relieving, and I saved several of the text messages I sent best friends and my husband, as some of them were so supportive and encouraging, and others were very gently, lovingly saying, yeah, we knew. So
this is not new news.
This is not news to us. No. So it was great. That day was a turning point. It rewired everything that I thought about myself and the way that I experience the world.
Well, and it allows you some freedom and knowledge to walk into it with a little bit more confidence because you know what you need to accommodate. We have for those that don't know, Time Timer is a second generation family-owned business, and the son of the founder is also a late life diagnosed ADHDer. Really? So he just got diagnosed probably a few years ago himself. Oh my gosh. And it is kind of one of those things very similar. Like, none of us were super surprised, and it's totally fine and normal. And of course, we're very blessed to work for a company that makes a tool to support this audience anyway. So we're like, what do we need? Like, what do we need to do? So this is, I think that's a lot of people out there can relate to that story. And I think what your organization is doing is really helping people take that step forward, right?
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully. That is the goal.
So were there any like challenges that that suddenly became easier after your diagnosis?
Easier, no, but I felt more prepared to tackle them. I felt like I had more tools in my toolbox. So, for example, I really struggled with procrastination, particularly when it came to emailing or navigating that kind of communication space. I would put off emails or tasks for a long time. And once I began to recognize, oh, this is what's going on. This is where I'm struggling. This is a moment of they describe it as, procrastination comes from pain. I'm feeling pain. Why am I feeling pain? Let's go solve that source of the pain. Whether it was, I just didn't know how to answer an email. I wasn't confident in my response. So there was that. There was time management, of course. Right. Getting tasks done on a appropriate basis, not rushing until the end, not waiting until the very last minute to tackle things, but also even in the way that I was interacting with peers. The energy that I brought to a conversation, some days good, sometimes really low. It was this moment of just going, oh my gosh, okay, it's not that I'm a bad employee. Right. I'm not a bad person. I am operating with a different system. I'm playing with a deck of cards no one taught me how to play. And then suddenly, I get so excited, I get tongue twisted. Suddenly, somebody kind of gave me a few instructions and began to say, this is how you win.
Right. So what do you think is like some of the most misunderstood aspects of neurodiversity in the workplace? Oh,
gosh. I think that this is a little bit of a tough one because everybody has different experiences with neurodiversity, right? Neurodiversity encompassing all of us, neurodivergence encompassing just some of us, those who have conditions, diagnoses, and experiences that fall under that umbrella, like ADHD and autism. I think the neurotypical or somebody who's not neurodivergent experience, if you haven't had a loved one or a close family friend or somebody in your circle navigate neurodivergence, it's really difficult to see what's going on. So that might be misinterpreted as, gosh, you see poor time management and you say, this person's just lazy.
Right.
You see somebody who maybe doesn't necessarily make eye contact and you go, wow, they're being rude. They're not interested. You see somebody who gets really excited about a topic and they just pour out and you begin to go, well, they don't care about this conversation because they're not asking questions. These are elements of neurodivergence that are rooted in different processing. And it's actually not being, I've heard a phrase, you're not lazy, crazy, or stupid. You're just operating differently.
Right.
And I think if you don't have neurodivergent people in your life where you can interpret those behaviors, it's easier to assume malicious intent sometimes.
Right. Do you feel like you see that common in a lot of the organizations that you work with?
I see moments of frustration when people begin to go, I know something's going on here. I just don't know what it is. And until I have an answer, my immediate answer is that somebody is just trying to make my life more difficult.
Right.
I think that's a very human response. We don't know what's going on in somebody else's brain, so we fill in the gaps ourselves, and so it can be sometimes easier. But I'm really happy to say a lot of the organizations I work with are already getting past the assuming malicious intent, and they're beginning to go, okay, there's something here. It's time to make a change on our end.
Yeah.
Let's learn. Let's dig in.
I always look at like there's the wheelchair ramp analogy, right? Where it's like that became like code, ADA compliant. You have to have a wheelchair ramp. And it was something that was done to accommodate people in wheelchairs. Yeah. But it's something that helps everybody. So why haven't we been doing it this whole time? And it's the same with neurodivergence. We all think differently. To expect everybody to think the same is an unrealistic expectation. So to have strategies and tools available for all kinds of thinkers just seems like it's one of those things that just makes sense.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like you mentioned, it's the cut curb effect, right? We all benefit from cut curbs. Or I grew up in a house where we had subtitles because my mother was hard of hearing. And to this day, I still use subtitles, and it still benefits me, even though I'm not hearing impaired. So yeah, there's so many things that we can do in the workplace to benefit neurodivergent individuals that only make somebody a better manager, a better leader, a better peer.
Right, exactly. So can you talk a little bit about like maybe what somebody might be going through internally versus externally, what is being seen? I mean, you kind of touched on that a little bit already, but like what's really going on inside for people that, I mean, maybe have or have not been comfortable either being diagnosed, like you mentioned, it took you a long time to even be diagnosed, or admitting to others that they've been diagnosed with the neurodivergent condition. Yeah,
absolutely. So before I start that, there's a phrase: if you've met one neurodivergent person, you've met one neurodivergent person. So each person's experience, just like the way that they process, is as unique and complex as layered. But there can certainly be similarities or moments of connection that we find or themes throughout the neurodivergent experience. From my personal experience, it felt like I was running on a treadmill and standing still at the same time. My mind would be racing, but I couldn't do anything because I was in analysis paralysis.
Right.
So it looked like I was just staring at the computer screen with apathy, but I was just trying to figure out what task was next or where I was going or what I needed to do. So it might look like that. It might look like somebody struggling with time management, and maybe somebody says, well, they really can't get this down. Well, no, it actually might be that they struggle with task initiation, kind of getting over the hump of starting something new. And so they don't move until they feel a pinch. And a pinch is an acronym for purpose, interest, challenge, purpose, interest, novelty, challenge, or hurry. Those are some of the
interesting.
motivators for neurodivergent, particularly ADHD folks.
Oh, I had not heard that before. That's so interesting.
I can't claim it. I learned it from another coach. But I find that resonates a lot with my neurodivergent clients.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what's, I mean, again, you also started to talk about this a little bit. And of course, being a timer company, we're very interested in the whole idea of time perception in the workplace. So you obviously have workplace environments that are super time sensitive, right? You clock in, you clock out. There's a certain amount of time you need to be spent on certain things. And then you also have the work environments that are a little bit more like, okay, you get here when you need to get here, get stuff done, make sure you get it done, go at the end of the day. And you're much more like you have to manage your own time. So you've obviously worked with so many different organizations. So what have you seen just from a time perception standpoint?
Gosh, so time perception is so difficult because it's so amorphic, time itself, right? It's really hard for
abstract.
It's so abstract. It's so difficult, I think, especially for neurodivergent people to get their hands around something that is that amorphic and difficult to nail down. Not to say that there aren't neurodivergent people who excel at time management, but it is a common challenge. Right. It's something that I would say it should be normalized. But so when you think of time perception, you think of the fact that when you have to manage your own time, if you're not motivated by that pinch, time slows down. Yeah. And we feel the stretch of time versus when you feel the time pressure of, you're really passionate about something or, oh my gosh, this is due today at 2 and it's 1:30. I got to knock it out. When you feel that challenge or that hurry, you see that time speeds up, but it's not a common, or I should say it's not a constant experience. I think for a lot of people, whether they're neurodivergent or not, but that time perception can be really, really tricky.
Right. Especially with so many different environments that can play out.
Yeah. There's a reason why many neurodivergent individuals might be more naturally suited or more comfortable in high pressure environments because the time moves quickly for them. So think like an ER, think of a doctor's office, think of where there is that pressure to keep moving. But when you are in a more self-managed, maybe office environment, it can be slow day, rough day.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, what are some I think there's probably a lot of people listening at this point that have said, oh, that sounds just like me. So what are some strategies that you recommend to your clients when they go into the workplace? Yeah,
that's a great question. So there are some basics that we can lean on, and then we have to get a little bit more creative, right? Since everybody is so different.
Right.
We can talk about time blocking, where it's saying, okay, I'm giving myself a dedicated space of time. I've got my calendar. I've got my day planned out. In a perfect world, we're all following that.
Right.
We don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah, wish we did sometimes.
Wish we did, right? But what we can do is maybe use a Pomodoro timer or the time timer to visualize and experience time that way. That way we feel a little bit of that challenge and pressure of time moving. We're able to experience it visually. That is a great way of managing our time. I always recommend Pomodoro timers or time blocking, but also making sure that we're getting into routines ourselves and analyzing, when do I feel the best when I'm doing something? When do I know that I'm going to be struggling with something? Kind of gauging our energy throughout the day and recognizing when we can do some of our harder tasks that require more, I call them spoons. Right. The spoon theory is how many spoons do you have to spend throughout the day? Think of it as, how many dollars do you have to spend throughout the day? If you're given a budget of 20, how many dollars does it take to complete a report? How many dollars does it take to check your email? But it's managing, okay, so if I know that I'm going to do something that's going to cost a lot of spoons, I need to do it when my energy is at its best. The coffee's kicked in, or the medication's kicked in, or I've slept well. What do you need to do that beneficially? So time timers, Pomodoros, energy flows, and routines. I really emphasize routines. Get into something that feels comfortable, that you can move through without spending a lot of the background noise on what do I need to do next.
As much as you can make automatic is that's definitely in my life right now.
I have young children, and it really disrupted my routine. Like when I had children, and I did not realize how reliant I was on a routine until I had children that dictate my routine or lack thereof. So now they're finally getting to ages where I'm like, I feel like I can get back into that. And it's unbelievable the difference that just a routine can make in someone's day and feeling like they can get stuff done.
Exactly.
Like it just has to be stuff you don't have to think about. You have to lessen that cognitive load, right?
Exactly. And I would say neurodivergent individuals deal with a greater cognitive load, not saying that one life is more difficult than the other, but maybe we spend a few more spoons or dollars on some of the things that are more rote or routine for people who may be neurotypical. I was explaining it to my husband just the other night. I said, I need to brush my teeth, but I just don't feel like I've got the spoons. And he just looked at me and he went, spoons? And I had to explain the whole theory. I was like, how have we not had this conversation doing the work that I do?
Last time I checked, you didn't use a spoon to brush your teeth, honey.
No. That was exactly his confusion. Right. But it was just the moment of, it takes a lot of spoons to do basic things like shower and brush my teeth. So, of course, time management is going to take more spoons because it's more of a cognitive load.
Yeah. It's time, and like you mentioned, time management and energy management.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes, obviously, our company is very focused on time. That's what we do. But I do think that energy conversation gets missed a lot. Like that spoon conversation gets missed a lot, especially when it comes to a lot of neurodivergent minds. It's you kind of take it for granted. I think that people just have energy.
Yeah.
And especially with ADHD, because a lot of people with ADHD have high energy, and people just assume that they just have this endless amount of energy, which is not the case at all.
No, it's not the case. I wish. I would get so much more done in my life if I had that level of energy all the time.
Exactly. So what are some strategies in terms of like the task initiation and transitions? I mean, transitions is something that Time Timer talks about a lot because it's actually been clinically proven to help decrease the anxiety of transitioning from one activity to another. So like, what are some strategies that you recommend for that? Because that's another high cognitive load activity that you're constantly dealing with in a workplace environment.
Right. I go back to routines, right? The more of a structured routine you can build into your day, obviously like the nuances are going to flow and ebb and flow, but the easier that we can make it to, I know at noon I'm going to take my lunch. No matter what's going on, noon is my lunchtime. Or 1 o'clock, I know that I'm going to run reports. The more that we can do that, the less cognitive load that we have. I am highly motivated by sugar. So personally, if I know that I'm changing a task, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to go get a gummy bear or a gummy worm or a piece of chocolate. So there's that element, building in a reward system for yourself so you have something to look forward to, so you dread less of the transition. Also giving yourself grace. I mean, we could all use a little bit more grace in today's time, but being able to understand that, okay, I know I struggle with transitions. A self-awareness is really, really key in this. Understanding I struggle with transitions. Here's maybe the element I struggle with. Maybe it's getting into the right mindset. Maybe it's you were in hyper-focus mode and now you have to break that structure or that deep focus. And giving yourself a break. Maybe it's a 5-minute social media scroll break. Maybe it's playing a game. Maybe it's deep breathing. Finding a routine and something that is rewarding and calming for yourself and giving yourself that buffer time, I think is at least one of my recommendations. But transitions are hard.
They're hard.
They're hard. And even if it's just sitting down and looking at your calendar and saying, I know I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that, talking to yourself out loud if you need to, treating yourself like a friend and recognizing that it's going to be difficult and giving yourself grace. Those are some of my recommendations.
So you mentioned self-awareness, and I want to hear a little bit more about that because that could be how does someone become self-aware?
Ooh, how long do you have?
Well, according to the Time Timer, about 35 minutes.
Okay, so wonderful. Love the Time Timer over here. I can speak to how I built it. Okay. It was very difficult at first because you have to be comfortable holding up a mirror to yourself and saying, this is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so maybe you start with the good. Here are the things that I do really well. Here's when I feel joy. Or if joy is difficult to tap into, here's when I feel the most energy. If energy is difficult to tap into, what's easiest for me? What takes less spoons? What do I feel less drained by? When do I feel like I can still tackle more? Starting with the good and then recognizing, okay, when do I feel the opposite of that?
Right.
When do I feel drained? And that might be physically, you feel it in your body, doing a physical check-in, doing a progressive kind of, okay, are my muscles tense? Where are my muscles tense? Having a conversation with yourself. It also can be really beneficial to talk to those who are closest to you, who see what's going on before you do.
Right.
It's really, really hard to be self-aware. We live in siloed echo chambers inside of our own heads. I know for me, it's really beneficial to talk to my loved ones, and they will reflect and say, you looked really stressed here when I thought I was smiling, or you seem really joyful. What's got you there? And I'm just saying, well, it's just a sunny day in Ohio. I'm very happy to see a sunny day in Ohio. So it's that self-reflective element of it, but also calling on others who love you and who will give you that constructive feedback of what they're seeing from you. And maybe it's jotting down patterns in a notebook. Maybe you have enough cognitive space to be able to track patterns in your head. But it is being very aware of that energy flow and when you feel like, yeah, I've got this, or no, I don't.
I mean, you touch on a good point. Like it is very hard to kind of force yourself to look in the mirror like that. I love that. I love what you said about like essentially you having a community to help you do that, because I think that would be a very big hurdle for some people to be like, okay, I actually have to think about where my shortcomings are, or like what I'm not feeling up to par on. So people don't want to acknowledge their own failures, right?
And I think one of the most difficult elements of self-awareness and being neurodivergent is that recognizing that sometimes it's not you, it's not your fault. You are not like I said, a bad person, bad employee, right? It takes a long time to be able to look in the mirror and be able to recognize that it's something different that you're dealing with. And that it's a deck of cards that you've been dealt.
Right.
It's not a reflection of you.
Exactly.
And it takes a little bit of time to be able to put distance between that and the judgment that you might feel. But we can get there.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that, because that's very, very heartwarming, to know like you don't, just looking at yourself in the mirror and judging what you're doing is only like, that's half of it. That's not the whole picture.
It's not the whole picture.
And it's not like the expectations that we have in our society and our culture as it is. It's a whole nother side of it that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Nothing. And it's just a matter of figuring out what needs to be worked on. And having that community and that support is so good for that. So for somebody who maybe, like, I guess, how would you recommend like someone advocate for themselves in a workplace for these types of needs?
Great question. When you think about advocating for yourself, it's a fine line to walk for a couple of reasons. One, you may or may not feel comfortable disclosing what's going on. You may be facing the shame or the stigma that we're trying to eliminate, but that is still present around being neurodivergent. Maybe you're not in an environment where you feel like you can be that transparent safely. Maybe you are, and that's great. I have a formula that I always recommend to anybody who's trying to advocate for themselves. And it is, first, you take your need as clinically as you can. Let me actually rephrase that. Not clinically, as straightforward and factual as you can. You tie it to a positive business need, and you make a direct request. So for example, if somebody does struggle, we're going to use time timer here. If somebody does struggle with time management and they wanted to advocate for visual elements of time, they wanted a time timer at their desk, they could go to HR and, using this formula, be able to say, time management is an opportunity for me. Notice I didn't say it's a struggle or a difficulty, but time management is an opportunity for me. I think that I could be more timely, more successful, and more productive if I was able to visualize time. Could I request that we purchase a time timer for my desk? So you get somebody, normally people want to help people.
Right.
So you have a clear request, somebody understands the positive business impact, so they're more willing to make that request happen, and you've been able to communicate it without I don't want to say woe is me,
Right.
but without the emotional element tied to it that maybe some people may or may not be comfortable with.
Right.
They may be able to navigate it. They may be uncomfortable and shut down. But the more straightforward that you can be, and the more that you can tie it to positive results, the more willing somebody's going to be to meet your request and advocate for you as well.
Well, and it's tying it to positive results, but it's also tying it to like, I mean, the way you said that, like you sound good, you look good.
Yeah.
You're not like trying to, like you said, it's not a struggle, it's not a shortcoming. You're saying this is an opportunity for myself and the business, and that sounds like such a ambitious, like productive thing to do. Like It's just a great way to phrase it. Absolutely. I love that formula.
I'm glad.
I'm gonna go back to work and use it for some things.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So let's talk a little bit about like the managers and leaders in these organizations. Yeah. So what is something that how can managers and leaders better support like different minds of all kinds? Like, I can speak for myself, like when you're working with teams, I mean, it's pretty well known, even if you take the, like the neurodivergence out of the equation, that like we mentioned, everyone thinks about things differently. So like, there's always an understanding in a team that you have to work with different team members differently or speak differently to different people to help them understand. But when it comes to like neurodivergence, and neurodivergent conditions, like there's another level to that. And I love that we are getting to a point where we're trying to make that more understood in organizations. But as a manager or leader, what's something they can do to make sure that they're accommodating for how everybody thinks on a team and an organization?
Ask the person.
Yeah.
It's and that sounds I don't mean to be like blithe or brush that off. No, but that's genuinely one of the trends within the neurodivergent community. And there's an amazing author who, in my excitement, I'm of course blanking on the name, who wrote a fantastic book about cultures of inclusion around neurodivergence. I will send that information to you.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes for anyone
listening. Wonderful. So this author talked about literally just that was the phrase they kept going back to, ATP, ask the person.
Ask the person.
It sounds maybe a little painful for managers. I can see a manager going, I manage 20 people. You mean I have to sit down and spend 20 hours in one-on-ones asking the person? I've got better uses of my time. But that time pays back tenfold.
Right. I was going to say, I don't know if there is a better use of time.
There's no better use of your time than asking the person and engaging with them. Right. And recognizing that it's not just the neurodivergent person who's going to need an accommodation. The neurotypical may as well, because maybe they've got a kid with special needs. Maybe they're taking care of family members who are aging. Maybe they themselves, I mean, think of an accommodation as glasses, as hearing aids, as I'm of course, getting so excited that I'm going to blank on another accommodation. But the point being is there are accommodations that we put into place everywhere. But we have to ask the person to understand what's going to work best for them. Because if you say you were somebody who really thrived working independently and were able to motivate and continue to move forward, your need for just the occasional check-in, hey, I don't need to be micromanaged, I've got this, may not necessarily jive with me, who does need frequent check-ins, not micromanaging, but needs frequent check-ins to make sure I'm on the right path, to make sure that I'm working at the right pace. So it's going to be different. You just got to ask the person.
Ask the person and just know. Right. How do you, like, I want another formula. How do you ask the person?
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways, right? Let's imagine that you have seen somebody who is struggling and you're wondering if they have ADHD or if they are autistic, which I would never recommend diagnosing somebody or pointing that out to them, but there is a way that we can approach them. You can factually, not clinically, factually describe the actions that you're seeing and describe the result of those actions. And then ask for, how can I support you? So if you see somebody who is struggling with time management, hey, I've noticed that the last couple of projects have kind of been turned in under the wire. I really appreciate you getting them done, but that does cause a little bit of a bottleneck for some of our other teams. How can we work together to make sure that we help you succeed and give you a little bit more time on that project runway? Right? It's a collaborative conversation. You're still including thank yous and positive, compliment sandwiches in a way.
Yeah.
But how are you offering your help? Not saying, I need you to fix it. You need to go do your research. But how can we as a team support you and get you to where you need to be? And that's really, I think, the crux of what being a manager is. You are lifting up and supporting your wide variety of individuals, depending on their needs.
I mean, as a manager or a team member or a leader, like your whole goal is to have success for the company.
Yeah.
And that happens when you have a good team and that team is set up for success. Right?
Absolutely.
So it just makes so much sense to make that, to have those conversations. And I love that how you phrased it, because I think where I could see people getting hung up on it is like, how do I ask? You know, you don't want to come out and just be like, do you have ADHD? Like, you don't want to say that. Like, that's not a good way to ask.
No, would not recommend for a variety of reasons. Some of them legal. I am not a lawyer, but I would not recommend you ask if somebody has a disability at work.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you did work in HR a little bit.
I know enough to be dangerous.
Exactly.
Would not recommend it.
What are some effective communication strategies? Like once you know kind of what some of the accommodations need to be, like how do managers communicate with team, but also how does the manager encourage other team members to communicate properly with people?
Okay, twofold question.
Yes, sorry.
Excellent question. I'm positing this in my head. So when you first want to communicate clearly, I have found that there is another formula. Drum roll, please.
Okay, I actually love these formulas, so keep them coming.
I find that it is easiest when people can say A plus B equals C, especially in these kind of fraught situations where you're trying to be polite or you're trying to navigate it carefully. But let's see. So in this case, if you were trying to communicate clearly, there's something called the 3 C's: context, clarity, and circle back. This is one of the ones that I've kind of talked about in some of my manager training. It's context. Hey, or maybe we'll start with clarity. First, let's start with clarity. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the request. I need this report by 2 p.m. But then I'm going to give you context. The client wants it by 5, and I want to make sure that I've got time to really pour over it and that we can get it to our marketing department in time for them to zhuzh it up. Could I request that you help me? And, you're going to lay out your request very clearly. Could you go through and check for spelling errors? Could you go through and add the data in that I'm missing? I'll leave blanks for you, right? You interweave context and clarity, but you make sure that you're painting the whole picture. And then you circle back. You come back to it and say, does that sound okay to you? Great. Just repeat back to me. What are we doing? What do you need? Let's make sure we're on the same page. That kind of element is a great way of communicating to make sure that you aren't missing anything. But again, you should ask the person, do they best communicate verbally? Do they best communicate in a written, do they need handwriting? Do they need typing? Do they need somebody to record something? Is it, hey, I'm going to record our conversation with permission and so I can play back what you need today? There's a wide variety of ways that somebody can communicate best, but it's also empowering them to ask for that and make sure that they know that they can ask for ways that they communicate best. And then when it comes time to communicate that to the team, it's important that we have a psychologically safe, but also team-oriented environment. It's, can Susan describe her needs to Derek? And will Derek recognize that the best way to support Susan is by respecting those needs and meeting her where she's at, or finding a middle ground if they don't necessarily align all of the time? It's ingraining that level of respect, I think, in your team there. Managers also, as a side note, it's really important for them to learn to advocate for their team members without disclosing. They can't walk up and say, Becky has ADHD, you know, so you really got to be careful. No, it's, hey, I'm going to advocate, or I'm just going to let you know, if you don't mind sending that to Becky. By the way, I think it's better for her in written form. So if you don't mind just sending it that way, that would be great.
Yeah.
And
that tells anyone, it doesn't tell anyone that anything they don't need to know. It just tells them exactly what's going to set someone up for success.
Exactly. So
that's great. What should managers and leaders be doing more of? And what should they be doing less of?
Oh, gosh. They should be doing more asking, which is really difficult to do. Again, right? If you have 20 people, it's difficult to spend the 20 hours, but that time comes back to you tenfold. Doing more asking, slowing down a little bit if they can in those one-on-ones, and understanding the impact of their directions and words. If I tell you to go do this, you know, how do you need that? How is that going to be the most successful? How is that going to make you, not make you feel, but, you know, what do you need out of that conversation to motivate you, to keep you going? I would love to see them doing less of, how do I politely phrase this? Sticking to an out-of-the-box approach, or a one-size-fits-all approach. One size does not fit all in this case. You could have two people in the same role, both with ADHD or both who are autistic, and their needs could be wildly different. So I want them to recognize that each person is going to bring a really unique mix to the table. That is my hope.
Yeah, I think that is the type of organization that I think we should all strive for, right?
Yeah.
And that's the type of team we all want to work on at the end of the day, because we do all, like we've talked about, we all think differently, regardless of a diagnosis or not. So having that, it's just something that can help everybody. And that's what's so wonderful about this approach. So what are some of the accommodations you've seen workplaces implement that have had the biggest impact on people?
Oh, good question. It depends on the person, right? For some individuals, it may be that they struggle sensorially, where the environment in and of itself is difficult. We are in a lovely space that is not difficult to be in a sensory fashion. But, you know, imagine being in a space that has a lot of fluorescent lighting, really bright, harsh lights, or being in a really complicated or complex, busy area of the office where there's a lot of conversation. I laugh at myself because when I first started with the organization that I used to work for, I wanted to be smack dab in the middle. So I picked a cubicle that was in the middle of traffic, in the middle of everything, could hear all of the music, could hear all of the conversations, because I wanted to be there. Wow, what a bad idea. What a terrible idea for somebody who has ADHD, whether or not I knew at the time. So we quickly had to move me to another desk after a while. But so I've seen accommodations like there's a school here in Cincinnati specifically supporting neurodivergent youth, and they have covers on their fluorescent lights, and the light switch only turns on half of the lights, right? That can be a fantastic way of bringing down the sensory load and the cognitive load on somebody. It could be noise-canceling headphones or blue light glasses to allow them to focus and really eliminate a lot of harshness or complicated, confusing audio stimuli. So those can be, just from an environmental perspective, really beneficial. It can be making sure to follow up everything with written communication, or having a verbal touch base just to make sure that they have the opportunity to ask questions. It can be simply recognizing that somebody has a passion and letting them talk a little bit longer about that passion. I'm trying to think of the other accommodations I've seen, like quiet spaces, like noise-canceling headphones, moving desks to a comfortable space, but not isolating the person, right? It's very critical that we're not excluding or saying, fine, I'll just put you in a closet over here, right? We want to make sure that they're still part of it. There's an organization that I work with out of Chicago called Aspiritech, and they do something called Stepping Up and Out. And they have these social activities that have a wide variety of in-person versus remote. It's a wide variety of interests, but it's accommodating the different ways that people feel included and making sure that it's not just a happy hour. Well, what if somebody doesn't drink?
Right.
What if somebody isn't comfortable in a loud bar environment. So there are so many ways that we can get really creative with support and accommodation. We just have to ask the person.
Right. So what are can you give some more examples of organizations that you've worked with that have done things really well?
Oh, sure. Well, Spirit Tech, huge fan. Absolutely will sing their praises. There's also, I've worked with an engineering firm who offered neurodiversity training and then offered coaching for their employees so everybody could raise their hand if they felt like they needed it to be able to say, this is my specific need. And so it was encouraging the individual to step forward and asking the person, but not putting the pressure on them. I've seen other organizations do, oh gosh, there's so many opportunities. There's another organization out of Columbus who is moving offices. And that is a exciting and stressful time for anybody. And they've taken the steps.
We just went through that, so we understand.
You did? Oh my gosh. Oh, what an undertaking.
Yes, exactly.
So we can take a look at our space and say, okay, are we making sure that we have ambient lighting or a lot of natural lighting? Are we putting in sound barriers? Are the cubicles high enough to make sure that we're not overhearing conversation?
Right.
Are there ways that we can do everything short of working remotely? Quiet spaces, conference rooms. You can take a look at your EAP and see, is therapy available? Is there a spending category for accommodations that somebody could dip into at their need? It's so individualized that I can speak to generalized accommodations, but when you get into the person, it's really okay, so what's going to work best for you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really inspiring just to hear about how other companies are doing it too. Because I think there's so many different things that organizations could build into building, creating environments that are just good for humans in general. Just
absolutely.
And especially, have you seen anything with the change of obviously COVID sending everyone to work remote, and then all of a sudden people are now being asked to come back into work or to do hybrid situations. How has that affected different people?
It's hard. I can speak to my own experience. We came back only a couple months into COVID, and I began to have panic attacks, and I began to really experience the pressure of being around other people after being in a cozy environment that I had control over. I have to imagine a lot of people can probably identify with that experience. Yeah. But I'm seeing another organization, the same one in Columbus, who is doing a return to work. And what they're recognizing is that everybody's been managing themselves for the last couple of years. And now it's time to really take a look at how do we create spaces that support people. And I'm seeing organizations have conversations like this one. They're pulling up resources like the Job Accommodation Network and getting into, it's called Ask Jan, and getting into, okay, I know that I've got an employee who is dyslexic, so how can I support them? Is it printing it on a different colored paper to reduce the strain on their eyes? Or is it having more verbal conversations or flow charts or something along those lines, right? We can get really creative when it comes to that. So there are that's the beautiful thing, is that there's a wide variety if we just get creative and we ask. I see people as they come back to work struggling to be out of that environment. So it's how much or how far can we take this to allow somebody to make it their own?
Right.
Is it allowing them to do the ambient lighting, having the blue light glasses? Is it them having a specific setup or a specific chair even, right? Who hasn't had a bad day of back pain? And that's been all that you can.
I've definitely brought my own chair to work before.
Right. I had my own chair cushion for a long time, right? It's identifying the pain points in the person and solving them.
So talk to me a little bit, those are some really great real world examples. So can you give a few examples about because you're working on two sides of the equation, right? You're working with the individuals in the workplace and you're working with the organization. So can you gave some good organization examples. Can you give some examples of individuals over the years that have been able to really turn stuff around or change how they feel when they walk into a workplace based on some of the accommodations that they're willing to ask for or advocate for, or maybe it's just through the therapy that they're able to get?
Well, so I'm working with a couple of, ironically, college students right now. And on time management, we're using a curriculum called Seeing My Time. And I'm so proud of them because I've seen them be able to really take hold of their schedules and their planning and feel a little bit more confident and feel a little less shame in what they're navigating because they have a better understanding of time now.
Right.
It's a very elementary, in a way, understanding of time, but nobody teaches us.
No. I mean, this is how Time Timer came to exist is because nobody was teaching how to handle time.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. There's so many wonderful tools like Time Timer, like Seeing My Time that can allow somebody to grow and expand in that way. And I had a call with one of them today, and she whipped out her notebook and she said, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to plan my week out. And I just loved hearing her flow of consciousness because she was accommodating herself as well as calculating what she needed and giving herself grace and at the same time saying, I don't want to do that. Oh, I need to make sure I do this. This is how I'm going to structure this.
That's so inspiring.
I just sat there in joy and just let her talk to herself because I was going, you know what, girl, you've got this.
Yeah.
You've come so far in the time that we've been working, and I'm just really proud
so
of her.
many people that can feel so lost in those things, and just finding the right support is like so important.
Yeah.
So talk to our listeners a little bit about like how they can find that support, whether through Beyond Neurodiversity or where they can find.
Oh,
help
sure.
like that.
Well, you are welcome to reach out to me at www.beyondnd.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Sammie Kelly, but you can also find amazing resources like the Time Timer. You can find curriculum like Seeing My Time. There are a wealth of resources that we could name in a very short period of time that we could go through, but those are my top recommendations, at least to start.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. I think this has been such an inspiring conversation.
Thank you.
I think I'm excited even to get back to the workplace and implement some of these ideas myself.
Good.
I love the formulas, and I hope the people listening have really learned a lot. Like, I think you've given some great advice. So I highly recommend to anyone who's listening, look up Beyond Neurodiversity.
Thank you.
Find the tools that you've mentioned. Use the formulas you've taught us.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there's so much that we can do to just, again, create these environments that all humans can thrive in or advocate for ourselves or learn more about ourselves and how we can do better. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Rethink Time. Don't forget to subscribe and visit timetimer.com for supporting tools and resources. Make every moment count.